So unfortunately, over the past couple weeks, we've had a revival of this Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury Glovegate situation. It's all very tedious at this point. So I'm not really going to talk about anything to do with the gloves because there's no point. These people have no intention of following any kind of logic or rational thinking. They're hell bent on believing a fairy tale. Now, the reason that there's a certain section of the Deontay Wilder fan base who are behaving like this, it seems as though it was triggered by Marcellus Wilder, who's Deontay's brother. Now, Deontay is not the sharpest tool in the box, as I've said many times. You'd be hard pressed to find many fighters who are more intellectually challenged than Deontay Wilder. And I'm talking about top level fighters. But his brother, who of course is not a top level fighter, appears to be just that. Even less bright than Deontay is himself. So he put out whatever on social media, insinuating that there was some foul play going on and that Deontay ended up with a dent in his forehead and Tyson Fury put something in his glove and all this kind of nonsense. And so this has spurred on the Wilder fanboys to continue with their delusions. Now, historically, of course, yes, there has been glove tampering, people fighting with loaded wraps and all that kind of stuff. And if you go way, way, way back to, the early days in the 20th century, there was all kinds of crazy stuff that people were putting in their gloves. But boxing has come a long way since then. And now, because of what has happened in the past, they have members of the opposite team who supervise the hand wrapping, and they have members of the commission who stay with the fighter the whole time. They sign off on the wraps, they sign off on the gloves after the gloves have been taped over, etc., etc. And they've got cameras on them all the time. The fighters, that is. So it would be exceptionally difficult for a fighter to put anything in their glove. And think about it. If you're going to put a hard object in your glove, you don't just want to try and squeeze it in down the wrist and it ends up in your glove in some, awkward position, because you'll probably end up damaging your hand more than the opponent. So you don't want to do that. And either way, we know that Tyson Fury didn't tamper with his gloves. But as I say, the Deontay Wilder fanboys are in this state of perpetual delusion. And it's even worse than it was before. I've often talked about how Deontay himself is a very deluded individual and his fan base is a reflection of that. Birds of a feather flock together, like attracts like. But they are in such a state of denial in terms of what happened to Deontay in that rematch because of the perceptions that they hold, these false perceptions. And one of the false perceptions that they hold is that people from the UK simply can't fight. That people in the UK are all wimps. They're not real tough guys. There's no hardship in the UK. People are sitting around sipping tea and eating crumpets and all this kind of stuff that they believe. And they don't know nothing about, life in the hood and all. And they think that somehow they're very, very off, very, very inaccurate perception of what life is like in the UK. Means that every time a top British fighter meets the top American fighter in the same division, the top American fighter necessarily has to win because he comes from a tougher environment. They have this very simplistic way of thinking. Now, I said a long time ago, and I did several videos talking about it, that the only time that the neighborhood you come from, the environment you grew up in, the only time that really makes any kind of difference in a boxing ring is when your opponent believes it makes a difference. If your opponent buys into all that nonsense that, I'm from this rough environment and I'm from the hood and I've been shot before and I've been arrested and this and that has happened to my friends. If your opponent is mentally fragile enough to buy into all that stuff and believe that it makes you tougher than him or something, then yeah, it can have an effect on the way the fight goes. But if you get in there with an opponent who doesn't care where you're from or what you've seen or what your neighborhood is like, he's not interested in none of that. All he knows is that this is a professional boxing match with rules, with gloves, with a referee, with a crowd. This is not on the streets. This is not the gunfighter, the OK Corral. Okay, this is a boxing match. And therefore, he feels perfectly comfortable in the ring against anybody, no matter where they're from. And that is Tyson Fury's mentality. You see, Tyson Fury isn't from the ghetto. Tyson Fury didn't grow up, ducking bullets and all that kind of stuff. No. But Tyson Fury is from a traveling background. So he grew up as an Irish traveler in the UK. And they have a tradition which goes back hundreds of years of bare knuckle fighting. So for Tyson Fury, fighting is in his blood, and it's as natural as tying his shoes, going for a run. Things which to, the rest of the general public are normal. That's how fighting is for somebody like Tyson Fury. It's very normal. Comes from a fighting family. His dad, his uncles were all fighters, not just boxers, but bare knuckle fighters as well. Goes back many, many generations. So for Tyson Fury, getting in the ring and having a fist fight with somebody is no big deal. And that's not to say that it's only travelers in the UK who are comfortable fighting. No, there's lots of people in the UK. Of course, boxing under its current guise, all right, in its current form, under Queensberry rules, started in the UK. Everybody knows this. I mean, certainly when I was growing up, yeah, I grew up in a neighborhood where there was a lot of gun crime and knife crime and all that kind of business, drug dealing and what have you. But back then, fist fighting was a much bigger deal than it is today. Today, in inner city London and other parts of not just the UK, but inner city parts of America too, people don't really fist fight the way that they used to back in the days. Not really on it like that anymore. Now it's more about weapons and, people jumping other people and there's like one guy and 10 guys jump him. That's more what goes on today. I mean, it used to happen back in the days as well, but even more so now. People don't really want to, as they call it, say it in America, they don't want to shoot a fair one no more. And therefore, what does coming from a rough neighborhood really mean? Not that Deontay really comes from a particularly rough background anyway. He was a church boy growing up. He wasn't a particularly rough guy or nothing like that growing up. He worked several jobs, before he, in fact, even in the early stages where he was boxing. He wasn't some hoodlum who'd been in and out of prison his whole life. And no, that was never Deontay Wilder. And even if it was, it don't make no difference in a boxing ring. If you're talking about comparing British people to American people, well, if it was a gunfight, you took a bunch of people from London and put them up against a bunch of people from Chicago, right? From the rough area of London and the rough area of Chicago, and that you arm both sides with guns, well, you're going to pick the Chicago side to probably win because they're a lot more experienced with guns, So that is understandable. But getting in a boxing ring, there are no guns. There are no knives. It's just you and the other guy. You can only use your two fists. You both got gloves on. There's a referee. There's 3 judges. So all of that, I'm from the hood and I'm from, it don't mean nothing in a boxing ring. And this is what the Wilder fanboys still can't get their heads around. Now, there's also an ethnic element to it as well, because many of the Wilder fanboys believe that because of the color of Deontay Wilder's skin and the fact that he's American means that it's impossible for him to lose to somebody with the color skin that Tyson Fury has. This is a belief that they've had, okay? And so because Tyson Fury, this English guy who's not from the hood, went over to America and destroyed Deontay Wilder in the rematch, they literally can't get their head around it because everything they believed has been smashed into 1,000 pieces. And so rather than accept the reality of what happened, they're saying, oh no, it can't have happened. There's something, no, there was cheating. There was, this is what's going on. It's called cognitive dissonance. That's what they're suffering from right now. It's a psychological condition. So yeah, it's very unfortunate that they're still carrying on with all this nonsense. I had heard some people say that some of the Deontay Wilder channels are just trying to keep their views up so they can make some money. And that's why some of them have revived this Glovegate nonsense. And yeah, I'm sure that that's part of it, but there are a lot of Wilder fanboys who don't have channels and they are coming out of all this stuff still. So for them, it's not really about views or money. It's just, pathology. They're in deep denial. They're suffering from cognitive dissonance. They can't reconcile their beliefs and their perceptions with actual reality, with the reality that happened in that rematch. They cannot reconcile the two things. So they're short-circuiting in the brain, in their tiny little pea brains. They're short-circuiting like Johnny Five. So, yeah, sad stuff. I can only imagine how sad it's going to be if Tyson Fury demolishes Deontay Wilder again. And see, the thing about Deontay is that he hasn't really been saying much about it. I mean, for one, he probably wouldn't want to get sued. But for two, hopefully, Deontay has enough sense. I know he's not very sensible, but hopefully he has enough sense to understand that he can't put his psychological eggs in that basket. The basket that says Tyson Fury cheated. He had something in his gloves. Hopefully he's got enough sense to know he can't put his psychological eggs in that basket. Psychologically, he has to understand the reason he lost to Tyson Fury is because Tyson Fury was the better fighter. And the only way that Deontay Wilder stands any chance of beating Tyson Fury in the rematch is if he improves, is if he ups his game. That's the only way. And you see, this is where Wilder's fans are doing him a disservice by trying to tell him on social media and create this climate on the internet of, rather than giving Tyson Fury credit, just saying, oh no, Fury cheated. He didn't win because he was the better fighter. That's doing Deontay a disservice, because if that gets into Deontay's head and he starts thinking, actually, I don't need to improve, I just need to have more strict officials and people who are watching Tyson Fury every second of every moment, from when he's in the changing room getting his hands wrapped all the way to the ring, when he's in the corner, when he's in the, all I need to do is get people who are just on him like a hawk and watching his gloves for every second up until the opening bell. That's all I need to do. If I can get that done, then I'll win the fight. You see? That would be a terrible, terrible strategy by Deontay Wilder. A few weeks ago, a couple months ago now actually, Wilder was talking about conversations he'd had with George Foreman and other fighters who've been giving him advice. That was encouraging for Deontay. Yeah? Because after all that costume nonsense and all the other rubbish that Deontay was coming out with, for him to actually start reaching out to the likes of George Foreman and other people showed that he understood where he went wrong and that he actually needs to improve to be able to win against Tyson Fury in a third fight. But with the revival of this whole Glovegate nonsense, dear oh dear, it's not looking good for Deontay if he starts buying into that stuff himself. Does he really believe that deep down? I think that deep down Deontay knows that he just got beat by the better man. even if he doesn't admit that to himself on a conscious level, I think subconsciously he knows that. And I wonder what's going on with Deontay with regards to his rumored injury. Is it really that bad? Is he getting cold feet about this rubber match? Is he contemplating having a fight in between? Is it a money issue? Because we've seen so many fighters come out saying that they're not willing to take reduced purses and all this kind of business in wake of, the lockdown strategy hurting boxing economically and the economy as a whole. They're not willing to take a pay cut. So is that what's going on with Deontay? Maybe it's all of the above. But yeah, back to the original point. It's Glovegate business. It's sad that people are trying to revive it. Still trying to flog that dead horse. Dear, oh dear. Deontay, if you've got any sense, even a tiny fragment of sense in your head at all, you won't buy into any of that. You'll be going away and trying to improve your game. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about this whole situation. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.